Hey, welcome back. Let's dive into our condensed schedule of week 4 and 5, where we will go over the biggest matchups from those 2 weeks. Starting up, I believe we have the Bengals beating the Jags. Uh, Big takeaway from that was Joe Mixon finally had the game we all knew he could have for this season.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed after sitting behind that bad of an offensive line. He was able to rack up 151 yards and three total touchdowns because that the Bengals line was the whole reason that I feel like they're dragging Joe Burrow down is he hasn't had time in the backfield to do anything, and the fact that Mixon was able to break through behind that bad of a line, I think the Bengals are starting to look good this season.
That a really good game there. Burrow gets his first win as an NFL quarterback. He's fought really hard the past couple of weeks, but kept coming up short, including a wild tie to the Eagles. But he finally gets his win, and with that first win, I mean the Jaguars are on a I wouldn't even call it a downhill skid. It's more they're rolling down the hill.
Yeah, I think that week one win might have been a bit of a fluke, as they really haven't picked up steam since, and they're looking like they still haven't got the pieces yet to finally make a push towards the playoffs. So we'll see how that pans out this season.
With week 4, another team that continues just to week by week skid and just fall farther and farther down, at least my personal power ranking. The Cowboys, we know they have the good players. They got pieces. Mike McCarthy is supposed to be the game-changing coach to fix all of Jason Garrett's problems, but here they are. They lose to the Browns. They just keep dropping. Like if you're the Cowboys, what do you have to do to turn this around before it's too late?
I think you personally need to upgrade that defense, as you know, we originally thought like the Panthers and the Jets defense was the worst in the league, but the Cowboys are really showing me that that defense is just horrendous.
They're really struggling, and that's one of the things I was talking about. Because even on the defense, you just look at that depth chart. You just look at it on paper. They got playmakers. I don't know why it's not working. I don't know if that's the play calling. I mean, the secondary is kind of weak now that Byron Jones is gone, and it's really showing.
Yeah,
But even
and
at that, I mean,
another big takeaway from that is, Byron Jones is gone. Leighton Vander Esch can't stay healthy to save his life. But I mean, yeah, you look at that team on paper and you have Demarcus Lawrence, you have Jalen Smith, you have Chidobe Awuzie. Like, those aren't slouch players. Like, those are very good players. But that defense, like, you let the Browns put up 49 on you. Like, come on.
yeah, that's really rough, at least from my perspective, because when I look at all 32 teams, I see the Browns offense as the most dysfunctional offense potentially out of all those teams, at least out of the teams that look good on paper. On paper, the Browns offense looks great, but they're so dysfunctional, and you let them score almost 50, that's a problem.
Yeah, the tackling, Odell's big play that game was that like 60-yard run. That was originally should have been a loss for about 15, but the Cowboys just couldn't tackle him, and you let it that big of a run, you let up 50 points. It's looking like they need to start drafting defense this season.
I mean, yeah, you got your quarterback, although as we all know, uh, Dak's out this season, but hoping for a quick, speedy recovery. Looking to the future next season, you'll have your quarterback. You definitely have your receivers. You have three great receivers. Don't lose any of them. You have a good running back. Your offensive line is still considerably one of the best in the league. Next season, for the Cowboys, I'm looking at safety. I'm looking at a big body in the middle because that's what Gerald McCoy was supposed to do. Was supposed to be that big D tackle to clog the middle. He got hurt. Maybe an edge rushing linebacker would help. You got Demarcus Lawrence, but he's an edge defensive lineman. Get yourself a good edge linebacker. Have a power rush with Demarcus off one side, speed rusher off the edge with the other side. Try to make a little nice 1-2 punch. But I wouldn't do anything with that offense until at least round 5 or 6, and maybe try to get like a hidden gem of some sort.
Yeah, no, that offense looks like it's already dead set in stone, but that defense has just got to stop allowing so many points, and they got to tackle better, and their injuries is what's also hindering them. So Yeah, I feel like you need to spend the next draft heavily drafting defensive players.
That's all you can do if you're the Cowboys. I feel like this season it's kind of a lost one now, unfortunately, with the Dak incident. But they're still a good team. Uh, once defense is figured out, they figured out that whole miss. No injuries, cross our fingers. They'll be good next season, ready to go. Moving on to a team that, quite frankly, doesn't have time to wait for next year. They got to win now. Buccaneers, close one, but they take care of business against the Chargers.
Yeah, Brady finally put up the numbers that everyone was expecting him to put up with 369 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. But what still surprises me is you put up that stat line on the Chargers and you still only win by a touchdown. Like, what do they got to do to close out games against, a Chargers team who really isn't there with Eckler being out and having a rookie quarterback in the backfield? Like, that was a close game. The Chargers easily could have taken that if they had all their defensive starters healthy.
I think the problem with the Buccaneers is they're just not clicking. They have the pieces. They're playing good. They're not meshing all as one unit yet. And that is probably because that tends to happen when you keep like an entire team and what you do is you switch out quarterbacks and like not even like in the Charger instance where you bring in a rookie and you're more merging him in. You bring a veteran, of course, of all veterans like Brady down to Tampa Bay and you just throw him into that offense. It's going to take longer to mesh, but the offense seems like they're kind of chugging along. They're finally working together. The defense is very up and down, and then they're up again, then they're down again. If the defense can get consistent, the Bucs will be right there at the finish line to win their division with the Saints.
Yeah, and personally, I thought that Justin Herbert had another great showing. He almost had another 300-yard game along with 3 touchdowns, and he only had 5 incompletions, going 20 of 25 in the air. And I personally think he's I wouldn't say a sleeper candidate for Rookie of the Year, but everyone says Joe Burrow right now is leading, and you'll have like Justin Jefferson, CD, Clyde Edwards, like you have all them, but I think Herbert is kind of nudging his way up in that list. The problem is the Chargers have to get over losing close games like this for him to really like solidify himself as the guy in the top spot.
I 100% agree. If the offensive rookie of the year, at the current rate it's going, if it comes down to Herbert and Burrow, their stats are so similar in my opinion. It's really going to come down to who just, won more football games. And that's going to be tough because both of these guys have only won one game and we're edging our way towards the middle of the season, and they both only have one win apiece. So if one of them wants to get the edge over the other, they're going to start winning football games because this is Herbert's offensive rookie of the year to win. He has just as good as numbers as Joe Burrow. He's got to win football games. And that's the same thing with Burrow. This is Burrow's offensive rookie to win. But you need to win football games. Passing yards are great for both of them. The touchdowns are great. But they're not winning football games. Is it their fault? No, it's neither of their fault. But it's going to come down to who can lead their team to more wins. Because from what I see, they put up almost identical numbers night in and night out.
Yeah, I was about to say they both have their rookie mistakes with throwing interceptions, and I think Herbert, you can blame that on he's a rookie and he's still trying to mesh together with his team. And I think Burrow mainly throws picks because he never has time in the pocket, which forces him to throw bad passes. But I feel like both of them have a very good shot of rounding up that offensive rookie of the year trophy.
It's really going to come down to them, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or one of the two. Actually, you could really say one of the three. Between Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Chase Claypool, in my opinion, out of those three receivers. And I can't lie, Chase Claypool had a great week, but let's talk about overall between those seasons. Hey, they got their win, and Justin Jefferson was there for it. I think right now Justin Jefferson is proving to be the best offensive wide receiver rookie as they finally get their first win against the Texans.
Yeah, the Vikings went down and played the Texans in their home stadium and finally secured their first win behind Cooks, another monster performance, 130 and 2 touchdowns. And yeah, I think Jefferson, putting in that slot because he really wasn't played the first week, and I think that's kind of what hindered them. Now that they're letting him run as he should, he's really putting up a good stat line for Rookie of the Year. But the Texans struggle again. Both teams were 0-3 coming into the that game, and the Texans lost, went 0-4, and they finally fired Bill O'Brien.
I mean, long overdue. And if you're a Texas fan, you really think it is long overdue. Everyone's been waiting for it pretty much since the week after that DeAndre Hopkins trade. But it finally happens after he proved himself to the organization that he doesn't know what he's doing and that he just traded away like the prime, like at the bare minimum, I don't care what you say, bare minimum top 3 wide receiver in the league away for like a bag of chips.
Yeah, not only did you trade away, in my opinion, the best, well, I will say, in my opinion, statistically, the best receiver this season, in DeAndre Hopkins, you traded him for an old washed David Johnson, who I will respect David Johnson. He's playing decent this season. He's finally getting back to, playing better. But yeah, when you trade him for David Johnson and some like 4th round pick that they probably aren't going to draft well with anyways, like you gave up a generational talent for a washed running back. Like I think it's finally time. I'm glad that Bill O'Brien finally got fired because he really took the Texans, who easily could have been a Super Bowl contender this season, and he just drove them into the ground. Trading away your second best piece. That's just you can't do that.
Yeah, and that's the pick is the part that really got me in that trade. I was very puzzled the fact alone they would trade Hopkins, but the fact that you trade him for, like you said, an old injury prone running back. Not even old, it's just so injury prone running back in David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins, and you don't even secure one first round pick at all is it's mind boggling. I thought it would have been maybe still a bad trade in my opinion, but I think one where you could maybe argue if the case DeAndre was having problems with the coaching staff, which I believe that was what was happening. I would expect like a David Johnson, a first, second, and like a sixth.
Yeah, and in a similar trade, with the star receiver, whenever Stephon Diggs was traded, he was traded for, I believe, a second, a third, and a fifth. And while you might argue that, yeah, that's another receiver who you should think would return a first rounder, getting a second, third, and a fifth for him is, that that's still a good trade because the Vikings used those picks to secure that defensive cornerbacking core that they needed.
Yeah, I don't know. That is mind boggling to me that you can debate it, but you can even say that they're close. But it is crazy to me that Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins were traded for almost the same level of value when nothing against Diggs, of course, but DeAndre Hopkins is on a different level.
Yeah. And I will say, a good turnaround was the Colts are finally, they finally put the Bears out of commission. We were talking about it last week about how the Bears being 3-0 was kind of a fluke, and I think the Colts finally stepped up and did the job that everyone in the NFL has been waiting for, and give the Bears the first loss of the season.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. The Bears only scored 11 points, a very odd score, but we'll zoom by that. Only 11 points. I wasn't surprised at that, of course. I mean, you ask anyone, especially a Bears fan, what their Achilles heel is, they'll probably just say offense, point blank. It's just the offense. But the defense did good. You can knock the defense for holding the Colts to 19. You can knock the offense for only scoring 11, though.
Yeah, I think that game was an entire defensive shootout. The final score being 19-11, and the Colts having arguably the best defense in the league, and the Bears having a top five. That was just a straight good old defensive shootout.
But yeah, the Bears get their first loss, but they turn it around next week in a very controversial game. I know this had a lot of people talking about it. The Bears come back week 5. and beat the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. And before we even get into the stats, I just got to know, do you think Tom Brady knew it was fourth down? Do you think he was just trying to get an extra down out of the refs, or do you think he actually lost the down?
I think that exactly what Bruce Arians said, because Bruce in the post game said that Tom Brady 100% knew what down it was, and I 100% do think he knew what down it was. You're telling me a 6-time Super Bowl champion quarterback doesn't know that it's fourth down? I feel like he realized he made a boneheaded throw, and I believe they needed 10 or 12 yards, and he only made like a 7-yard check down, and he got tackled. He knew that he made a bad call on that play, and he was trying to, I don't know if he was trying to get the call overturned or, get them to switch it to third down, but there is no way I will not believe anybody saying that Brady did not realize it was fourth down.
I 100% agree, and that's the only thing I can think of personally. Because Brady knows his greatness. We all know his greatness. 6-time champion. Um, Never been done before once he got that sixth ring. Only person up there with him is the late, great Charles Haley, who has 5. But yeah, like you said, you're telling me Tom Brady, 40, is he 40, 41? He's been in the league for 20 years at least, 6-time champion. All of a sudden, now after hundreds and hundreds of games, now he forgets, when it's fourth down or not. No, he knew what down it was. Like you said, he realized he'd not make the greatest decision, and he was just seeing if he could use kind of that, whether you think he's not or he is. I'll just use it with parentheses, goat magic, to see if he could get an extra down out of the refs, and the refs weren't buying it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. Like, yeah, you can't tell me that someone of that caliber forgets what down it is. I feel like Brady just realized he made a very bad decision on his fourth down play call, and he was just looking to see if there was a way to get that overturned.
But besides that, I mean, that entire game was great. We got the Nick Foles Brady rematch, although I don't think anyone from, 2 years ago, no, three, anyone from about 3 years ago would believe you if you said that 3 years from now, Brady and Nick Foles would be rematching on the Bears and the Buccaneers. I know I wouldn't believe it. I would think that they've had one too many shots or something. But
Yeah,
here they were.
and the good old joke goes along now that Nick Foles is still Tom Brady's dad when it comes to a quarterback matchup.
Tom Brady, 20 years in the NFL and not too bad. Only has 2 fathers between Foles and Eli.
Yeah, moving on to the next game of Week 5, the Panthers beating the Falcons, and that's the Panthers grab back-to-back wins, and Bridgewater puts up another 300-yard and 2-touchdown game. I feel like he's personally cementing a good second place run for comeback player of the year. Because let's all be real, Cam Newton's winning comeback player, but I feel like Teddy Bridgewater is definitely solidifying himself as being worth the $60 million he's paid, and the fact that he can still be a starting quarterback even after his injuries.
I'll say, with this game, I have one takeaway from it, and it has nothing to do with any individual player or stats. And I think it's one that especially Falcons fans are wondering, how much longer is Dan Quinn going to be here? He's got to be out of here soon, right? Dan Quinn's got to be out the door eventually.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe both Dan Quinn and the general manager were fired at the end of Week 5. I believe they were both relieved of their duties.
I'll say that even at that, I would say that is, what is that, 4 years? 4 years too late. I know it was, Super Bowl appearance, but I don't think he should have kept his job after what happened in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. But of course, that is my opinion with that.
Yeah, and with the changes, so you just lost your head coach, you just lost your GM during the middle of the season. You're 0-5, and your organization put out a statement saying that Matt Ryan will most likely not be the quarterback of the future. Like, where do you go from there if you're part of the Falcons?
Um, Quite frankly, I don't think they don't need to overthink this too much, because now that we know Dan Quinn is gone, that's not a bad thing. I mean, let's look at some other positive examples of this. The Texans started 0-4. They fire Bill O'Brien. What happens the next game? They win their first game. For all we know, the Falcons, because the Falcons have a good team, they have good players. For all we know, they could come out this next week and finally win their first game. That Dan Quinn's gone. I don't know if it'll happen. I think that definitely depends on matchup. But if it did happen, I wouldn't be surprised because they have a really good team, good quarterback, good offense. Uh, one of the worst defenses in the league, but they still have some playmakers on that defense.
Yeah, they'll definitely have their work cut out for them because their week 6 opponent is the Vikings, who have also struggled, and arguably their head coach might be in danger too this season.
But yeah, if you're a Falcons fan, although you want to be optimistic because you still have that high-powered offense. I wouldn't be too hopeful much longer. I would say that y'all are probably in a rebuilding phase. Matt Ryan's going to get replaced here very soon, I imagine. Whether that's from a veteran from another team or that y'all draft a quarterback, I don't know. Y'all are at pace to draft Trevor Lawrence, which I think would actually be a good idea for the Falcons at this rate.
Yeah, that would be a great fit in my opinion because you have Julio and you have Calvin Ridley, who's becoming slowly he's becoming a superstar in this league at wide receiver, and
Okay.
you have Todd Gurley, who plays sort of like Travis Etienne. So if he gets put in that offense with a good coach, the Falcons could easily start becoming a above 500 team again very soon.
All I can say is that they can draft Trevor Lawrence with that first pick if they get it, of course. But then after that, you have to address your defense, and really by that, you need secondary, and then you need some edge rushers. Because I know they drafted a corner, but I've already kind of vocalized my opinion. I was not a fan of their pick in the secondary in AJ Terrell. I think that they jumped on that way too early, and there was other corners still left that are better. And even at that, their safeties aren't the greatest. So they got to get like at least one more safety, one more corner, and then they got to try to find some kind of edge rusher. You got to get pressure on that quarterback, and you're not going to get pressure on the quarterback when the only person you have that could potentially ever get to the quarterback is Grady Jarrett, who at the end of the day is still just a run stuffer. He's not really a pass rusher.
Yeah, talking about defenses that could use some improvement, the Raiders upset the Chiefs 40-32, and that knocks the Chiefs out of the unbeaten club.
This is one of those things. This happens every year. It's very difficult for a team to win every game in their division. I mean, heck, look at it. You look at some of the greatest years from the Patriots dynasty, you'll check in and you'll see some very odd losses, especially to the Dolphins. It happens. What happened? Patriots still won the Super Bowl. It's not a big deal. Divisional matchups, you win some, lose some. The better team will win the most of them, which we all know will be the Chiefs. They will win a lot of them. That might be their only loss. They might take one to the Chargers, I believe, at the end of the season. Maybe. But besides that, they'll probably sweep the Broncos. They'll more than likely beat the Raiders in the rematch. But on the flip side, though, that's a great win for the Raiders. You got to get a big morale win like that. And they could easily slip in as a wild card team. I mean, I personally have them already in my playoff bracket. I see them making a wild card position.
Yeah, and I think that offense is finally clicking because, you had Derek Carr, 347 and 3 touchdowns, and Henry Ruggs, who averaged 59 yards a catch with only 2 receptions. He put up 118 yards and a touchdown with 2 receptions. I feel like if you can have a game like that from him at least once every other game, yeah, you're dead set on securing one of those playoff spots.
I mean, that's congrats to Henry Ruggs. With that performance, he kind of shut me up. Although I wouldn't say him entirely. shut up because that was his one good game. I did say that he was a Walmart Tyreek Hill, and of course, of all games, he did it to the Chiefs when he decides to do something like that. But overall, you look at all his games, all his stat lines, he doesn't put up the greatest numbers. But that game, I will say, does show a lot of potential.
Yeah,
Yet he has the chance to prove to me, at least to me, that he's not a Walmart Tyreek Hill. But I'm sticking by that for now.
yeah, going along the lines of having a great stat line, let's talk about arguably the greatest performance of Week 5. Chase
Oh yeah,
Claypool's
Chase
4
Claypool,
touchdowns as the Steelers beat the Eagles.
unbelievable. Chase Claypool. I don't think some people may saw it coming. I saw it coming, but not to this degree. I did not think Chase Claypool was going to have a game like this at all, especially this season, his rookie season. I did think that he was a steal in the draft. I did think that he was really good, and I had a feeling he would get overlooked. Although the Steelers did take him second round, which proved to be a good pick, and it's proving to be a steal. 4 touchdowns, 116 yards, and he torched Philly because Philly actually came out to play. Philadelphia almost handed the Steelers their first L, but you could argue that Chase Claypool single-handedly kept the Steelers from losing that game.
Yeah, that game was, on paper, the Steelers won by 9, which you could technically, say was, a good win. Like it wasn't a close victory. But I mean, that Eagles offense showed up to play. Wentz, finally played good this season. Miles Sanders, I believe, had 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, if Chase Claypool didn't have that big of a game, yeah, the Steelers would also be joining the Chiefs in the one-loss club.
But Claypool is looking filthy. And that's all I got to say about that. If he can replicate those numbers, undoubtedly offensive rookie of the year. If he have one more 4 touchdown performance like that, he probably has it in a lock unless he just completely falls apart for the rest of the season. Moving on though, Texans beat the Jags as I stated earlier. That's crazy, you fire Bill O'Brien and look what happens. You win a football game, albeit be the Jaguars who are slowly proving that they are the worst football team in the league outside of New York. But I mean,
Yeah, well, yeah, you could discredit that win from the Texans because, yes, they did beat the Jags, but the reason I personally think, that they're back on track for the season is Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks as a duo just absolutely destroyed that secondary.
this puts the Texans at 1-4, and it's a really interesting spot. Do you think? Because we all know they're going to have to battle very hard. But do you think this win is a little, just a little too late? Do you think that the Texans are not going to make the playoffs, even
I
though
th-
they're now turning it around?
I think the Texans would realistically basically have to finish the season with one loss at best. Like I feel like if you lose 2 minimum, you're getting on a very thin line of making the playoffs.
And that's especially because, as is looking right now, the Titans don't have any plans of losing this division. So the Texans would be battling for second place, where they're kind of in third. They're definitely in third place because although them and the Jaguars have the same record, the Texans are still kind of miles ahead of the Jaguars. And then you got the Colts, who are kind of a middle pack team. So if you're the Texans, you're really banking off of, you're going to win a lot of games from now on, and you're banking off the Titans, or not the Titans, the Colts crumbling and them dropping below you, let you jump to the second seed in your division, and then snatching like that last extra wild card spot.
I feel like in order to secure that last playoff spot, like you cannot lose more than 2 more games this entire season.
You really can, especially in the AFC. The AFC has a lot of explosive teams. I mean, single-handedly, there's 2 teams coming out of the AFC North 100%. No matter who wins, the Ravens and the Steelers are going to be in the playoffs this season unless they crumble. But I don't think either team has any intentions of crumbling as of right now. Of course, in the end of it, the Chiefs will be there. The Bills and the Patriots are probably both going to make it coming out of their division equally. And when you see that, let's say the Bills win their division and the Steelers win their division, whatever. We all know that the Ravens would be there as well. We can all make a good assumption the Patriots will be there as well. And then you have your other two division winners, the Titans, and then down south, more than likely the Saints. So then you got that extra seventh seed is going to be up for grabs, in my opinion, between the Raiders, the Bucs, and the Texans. Who takes it? I don't know. All I'm saying is out of those three teams, in my opinion, the Texans are the least likely to take it.
Yeah, and talking about all this, going through the playoffs, I think we can finally say after that loss to the Dolphins that the 49ers NFC North appearance last year was a gigantic fluke.
100%.
Yeah, your starting quarterback gets benched at halftime and replaced with C.J. Beathard against Miami. Like, what does that tell you?
It tells you that your team's lost because that puts the Niners at what 2-3. That's not a good look considering you won your conference last year. That's a really bad look. Uh, I don't know what's going on with the Niners organization, or really, I should just say the Niners. I don't know. I can't say their offense alone because their defense did not do good either. They gave up 43 to the Dolphins. So I would just say the team in general.
Yeah, I think I think they're still kind of shaking up from that Super Bowl loss because, I could see if you lost 43-17 to a team like, like the Titans or the Chiefs or something like that. But, you let Ryan Fitzpatrick put up 350 yards and 3 touchdowns and you lose by a lot more than double your score. Like, yeah, I think that Super Bowl appearance last year was a one-hit wonder.
No idea what's going on. On the flip side, though, I think with Ryan Fitzpatrick's performance, unless he gets injured or he has a really bad game, don't expect to see Tua play this year. This is definitely Fitzpatrick's year, and he's going to ride it out as the starter, in my opinion. Like I said, unless injury or he's just has one of those really bad games where you kind of have no choice but to put in your backup just to see what they can do. I mean, this is the second, I think, this year. Fitzpatrick has had a fantastic game. This one being better than the last one, the Jags. That's the game. He had a really good game against the Jags, but this one even blows that performance out of the water.
Yeah, so I guess we'll hop into the next game. The Browns and the Colts. The Browns secure the win 32-23.
What I picked up from this is the Browns are legit. Don't count them out. They could even really be fighting for that other spot in the AFC, and that is who I I meant. I don't know why I said the Bucs. That is an NFC team. The Browns would be the other team at the end of the tunnel, which would be very interesting because, at least off the top of my head, I cannot think of the last time 3 teams from the same division made it to the playoffs. But like, if the season stopped right now, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Steelers would all be on the AFC side of the bracket, at least of the playoffs.
Yeah, and like I think the Browns with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield. I feel like Odell's great performance last week. I feel like that Browns offense is finally starting to click. Because on paper that is a great offense, and I feel like they're finally starting to put that out on the field. And I fully, wholeheartedly believe that Kevin Stefanski was their best offseason move last season.
It's definitely proving to be so. He's definitely showing that it wasn't that the Browns had a fluke season 2 years back. It was just that they need a new coach. Freddie Kitchens was clearly not the answer. Kevin is looking fantastic running that squad. If you're the Colts, I wouldn't take this loss too hard. The Browns are proving they are a good team, and y'all held good with them. Y'all are still playoff contenders. It's just it's not looking good, is what I'll say. Because there's too many teams that are coming up for that seventh place spot, and y'all are there running for it, but y'all are in the very bottom of the barrel with your fellow Texans. But besides that, uh, this is my personal favorite game of the week. Seahawks Vikings shootout. Wilson, I mean MVP. I mean, I don't think you can even argue it right now. I can't see anything stopping Russell Wilson from winning MVP.
Yeah, not only does his numbers that he's putting up prove that he deserves to be number one in that MVP spot, but basically, leading the Seahawks with just under 2 minutes left, leading them basically the entire length of the field down to win. That just proves, MVP status.
Uh, I think a few weeks ago we had said that DK is morphing into a star right in front of our eyes. I'm gonna cut the BS right now. No, he is. He is a star right now. He's not becoming a star. He is a star right now. DK Metcalf is a certified star in this league.
Yeah, and I think him and Russ are really starting to mesh as a great quarterback wide receiver duo. I think on that drive alone to win the game, he threw to DK at least 3 times. Because I know he used DK's size to expose the Vikings' weak secondary, and I think that's what fully won them the game.
And that was really something crazy because normally we see Russ Wilson sharing the ball between his players, and if anything before it'd be Tyler Lockett who would be eating up multiple receptions on a drive. But this game they didn't really look towards Tyler Lockett too often, and they just let DK eat.
Yeah, with watching that game, what do you think of the fourth down play call decision by Mike Zimmer?
I won't say it's idiotic. I will say it's borderline idiotic. I think 100% you got to think of this long term. You know, you kick a field goal, you go up by 8, which of course is a one possession game, but 8 points is a lot harder to get than 6. Yeah, if you get the first down, you win. You can kneel it out from then on. But you're only up by 6. No, you're only up by 5, actually. So, yeah, you can't risk that. You have to kick the 3 to where if the Saints, not the Steelers or the Saints, my goodness, if the Seahawks get the ball back after the kickoff, they're going to drive down the field very effectively because Russ is having one of those years again. And, you got to have those 8 points because they're going to get a touchdown. But if you're the Vikings, you really got to bank off the fact that Seattle will get the touchdown. You'll still be up by 1 or 2. And now you can stop them on a 2-point conversion. You got a lot less field to work with. And the Seahawks really proved that game that their aerial attack was deep, not short range. So, yeah, personally, I would have kicked a field goal and make it 8 points. Bank off the fact that the Seahawks would not get into the end zone metaphorically twice for the touchdown and for the 2-pointer. I mean, I like it. It's a gutsy play call. It's probably what I would have done going for the first down. But realistically, it's the wrong choice.
Yeah, and I agree with it's not an idiotic play call, considering, you just need that first down to win the game. Um, but what I personally don't even blame Mike Zimmer for that call because, if you get the first down, that's an easy win. You kneel the ball one more time, let them run that final timeout, and you win. What I think really, hurt the Vikings in not winning that game is the fact that Dalvin Cook had gone out in the start of the fourth with a groin injury, so he was not in the backfield at the time. It was Alexander Madison taking the snap. And if you go back and watch that game clip, the hole was open on the right, and Madison cut inside. So I don't really blame the coach for that call. I blame the fact that Madison just didn't hit the correct hole.
That is a fair point. You got to. I don't know. I feel like you got to kick that field goal though. I like the play call. Like I even said, I probably would have made that play call. But it's one of those where you got to look back at it and you really got to think like, man, if we kick that field goal, let's say they still got the touchdown. I have confidence that the Vikings could have, for one play, just prevented a 2-point conversion. But who knows? That's just me.
Yeah, I always say that the Vikings defense, as young as it is, and like arguably you could say it's one of the bottom. I wouldn't say the bottom. I'd say it's in the bottom 10 of the defenses this year. But they've always been a bend don't break. So yes, I fully think that they probably would have let up a touchdown, but I think they could have held off the 2-point conversion. But I think that's what was going through Mike's head whenever he called the fourth down run was, he didn't expect his team to hold them out of the end zone at the end of the game.
That's true. And that's another thing you got to think of. If Dalvin Cook's in that game for that play, you got to imagine that the Vikings probably do get that first down. I personally think Dalvin Cook would have easily hammered home the first down there. And that's where I know it's situational football, in my opinion. And in that Viking situation, having your second string running back in, your starters not even able to play, 4th and 1 for the game, I don't think you risk it. Even though Madison is a phenomenal backup, I don't think you risk that. I think you go with the safe choice, the field goal. But we say that now, but if Madison got the first down, we would have called Zimmer a genius. So who knows? But then moving on, Saints Chargers overtime thriller. Drew Brees, great comeback performance. Chargers just kind of gave up what seemingly was kind of an easy one, because at least in that first half, the Chargers seemed to be beating the Saints in every facet of a football game.
Yeah, I think that was just a plain the Chargers gave up at halftime type scenario where, you had the big lead and you didn't expect them to come back. And, you know, I think that's what cost them the game is I don't think that they were ready to go all 4 quarters because they had such a big lead at halftime.
And I'm gonna probably put the blame in the coach in that one, because even after half, Justin Herbert kept playing good. Mike Williams went off. Mike Williams had one of the best games I've ever seen him play. And the whole offense looked good. The defense looked good, but they were giving up points, so they looked as good as you can, giving up points in the process. I just genuinely blame the coaches and the coaching calls on the Chargers side.
Yeah, and a big takeaway from that game, besides like I previously mentioned, Herbert making his case for Rookie of the Year with another 4 touchdown performance was the Saints managed to beat the Chargers, not in a great fashion, but they beat them without Michael Thomas, who was benched for an altercation in practice. So that tells me that the Saints are starting to get to the point where if Thomas has to go out again, they don't solely rely on him.
Yeah, they're finally. I've been waiting for them to do this because they didn't use him week 1. They hardly used him week 2, if at all. But no, Michael Thomas is kind of forcing their hand. They're finally using Emmanuel Sanders. And would you look at that? Believe it or not, surprisingly, Emmanuel Sanders is a great receiver, and he's playing great football for the Saints as their new number 1. I've been waiting for them to throw him the ball, and they're finally doing it, and they're looking good now.
Yeah, I mean, even in the Super Bowl last year when Sanders was on the 49ers, if Jimmy G did just overthrow Sanders, that touchdown could easily seal the game. Like, everyone kind of knocked on Sanders, and even I knocked on Sanders for kind of being slow. But, if you reanalyze that clip now, especially after that big performance that he had against the Chargers, that was all just because Garoppolo overthrew Sanders. And, yeah, with Sanders came out, I think 13 receptions and about 120 yards. Like, yeah, I feel like if Thomas were to get injured again, the Saints would, I feel like they wouldn't really worry about losing a game without Mike Thomas in the starting lineup.
Very much true. And if you're the Chargers, I mean, this is just a heartbreaker. You could have prevented overtime entirely if your kicker hits that 50-yard kick. But at the same time, I don't think you can fully blame him badly because the coaches and their play calling is what got them to that situation in the first place where they needed him to kick a game winner from 50. So there's I can imagine that there was a bit of tension in the locker room after that game. The best thing the Chargers can do is just throw that game away, act like they didn't even play the Saints, this year, and just move on to next week. Oh, that's the only way I can see them getting back in the playoff race.
Yeah, and key into that after that game, in my opinion, I wouldn't say the game of the week, but it was definitely the game to watch of the week. Was the Titans absolutely destroying the Bills, and they win 42-16 with a combined 5 touchdowns in the backfield between Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill.
And didn't that happen like all in the second half essentially? Because I know at halftime it was like 21-10 or so. It was a close game. It was competitive.
Yeah, I think Tannehill really turned on the burners after halftime to absolutely smoke the Bills. I mean, the Bills defense, who arguably is underrated in my opinion, because you have Micah Hyde, you have Jordan Poyer, you have Tre'Davious White. That's a very good secondary core, and even up front, Ed Oliver, and then you have players like Tremaine Edmonds at middle linebacker. Like that
I
defense,
love Tremaine Edmonds. He's a
that
phenomenal
defense
linebacker.
is no slouch. But I mean, that they look like they didn't know how to play defense against the Titans.
And it's one of those things, man, you got to think about it. The NFL now has to kind of look into it because it is very interesting because, you could say that the Bills just did not play good football or whatever, but I think it is very interesting when you have two teams that were both undefeated, very competitive in the AFC, meet up and one absolutely smokes the other. And it's interesting how the one that got smoked has been playing their games regularly scheduled. They've been practicing regularly scheduled. And the team that comes out and smokes them is the one that has had like essentially a 2-week bye week.
Yeah, that's 100% true. They basically had a free extra week off, which some could argue would be a good thing. But yeah, I feel like you lose the intensity that you get every week to take to practice. But that big takeaway from that game is that's the first real game this season where Josh Allen truly struggled. He had 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 interceptions, and like he once again threw under 50%. So I don't feel like that game truly hinders him at being like the second or third in MVP race. But I feel like that was the game where we finally saw that Josh Allen can struggle this season.
I just think it's very interesting because the Titans, they've been undefeated up to this game, which they still are. But up till this game, good wins, nothing necessarily crazy. They get like this 2-week bye week and they come out and they look completely rejuvenated. They look like how a team would look besides the, uh, penalties and whatnot. Take that out of it. They look like how a team would play week 1 of the season. They looked high motored, excited to play. But then you add the no penalties to it, which is a very big factor of most week 1 games. And they just come out and they smoke a Bills team, which looked, at least up until this point, somewhat impenetrable, or at least the defense looked impenetrable.
Yeah, but I think I feel like that loss really is going to hinder the Bills' season. I still feel like they're on par to take that division over the Patriots.
Oh yeah,
But only time will tell. If Josh Allen can have a bounce back game next week, I feel like they're in no real danger.
I don't think they are because although they took their first L here, as we all know, the Patriots are kind of battling their own issues right now. Cam's out, who knows how long with the virus, and I believe now they said Stephon Gilmore has the virus as well. So we don't even know if the Patriots are gonna be there at the end of it. I think they will because they're a good enough team. It just depends on if they can still grab a few wins while Cam and Stephon, who else, are out.
Yeah, I feel like though that, like I said, they're still on par to finish with a very good record, and I think they'll be able to edge out the Patriots this season as long as Josh Allen could go back to playing like he did throughout the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, and that wraps up our little week 4, week 5 condensed schedule. Some of the top games of the week. We should be going back to our regular 1 week at a time every game, starting next week with week 6. But that's going to wrap it up here at Backseat Coaching.